Commissioner, thank you very much for visiting IE University. We'd like to pose you a few questions. The first relates to Capital Markets Union. If you think upon how you can finance an economy, at the end we think that citizens, companies, we are muscles. The central bank is the heart, and we need someone to take this blood from the heart into the muscles. In a normal economy, you rely on banks, but in economies such as the US, they have also capital markets. So when you have an issue with banks, capital markets can send the blood into the muscles. That's why the Americans recovered in more or less in about a year. On the previous crisis, it took Europe 7 years. So we know the solution is the Capital Markets Union, but the perception is that it's not moving forward. What is preventing it?
Well, I think you paint the correct picture that what we want are banks and Capital Markets Union. And it is a work in progress. So I wouldn't accept that nothing's happening and nothing has improved. It's slow, there is no doubt about it. But what we're trying to do is quite incredible. We have 27 member states, all with their own, some small capital markets, some with issues about trying to, if you like, work with this broader idea of a union. So we have to work with the politics of that. We've taken a number of steps over a number of years, including some will come in December and next year, to build the infrastructure to provide for capital markets, because we want to make sure that SMEs and businesses and citizens have choices to invest, but also choices as to where they would get money to finance for them. And I look after the financial system, so I know absolutely we are over-reliant on bank finance. We need a better balance. But what we need to do is build a single market in capital. We've done it in other areas of Europe. We've developed single market, but not in capital. And there's lots of reasons why it's difficult, because, member states, protect sometimes their own banking system and indeed their capital markets as well. However, I think there is now political agreement that we need to push forward on capital markets. And here's the reason why. We have to invest billions in the transformation of our economy, on sustainable economic activities, on renewable energy, on digitalization. The public purse is too small. We need private finance, and we need deep and liquid capital markets to provide that. So in a way, while you paint a picture that Europe is, missing out and isn't there yet, that is also an opportunity that we can create strong capital markets. There's also, if you look at what Brexit caused, if you like, quite a sundering. I mean, London was the heart of our capital markets union, if you like, when the UK was a member. That's changed. So we need to look at how are we in Europe and what's our infrastructure and what are our needs in order to develop our capital markets union. But I want to give a very strong message. It is a big priority for us because we need this money. And also, if you look what happened during COVID, people who were working had money in deposit accounts earning nothing. That money would be better invested in our economy. So watch out next year for a retail investment strategy, part of our capital markets union. So we want people who earn money to make their money work for them. We want this capital to flow towards small and large businesses so that they have choices. And we're not there yet. But I hope that after this Commission's mandate, we will have all of the pieces of the architecture in place, and then we will have, in my view, we will have put life into Capital Markets Union.
Understood. If we address financial stability, once you see asset prices going up, you begin to see the seeds of potential issues that might arise. No, I'm thinking in 2018, the US repo market had big issues. Recently, we saw what is happening in the UK pension fund industry. Which would you say are the major risks you envision on the European stability?
Well, I think, in times that we're living in now, which is huge uncertainty, we're all a little bit anxious about where might the problems arise, and you've mentioned some of them. I mean, I'm not going to predict a place where problems will arise, but I will say that we're very conscious and very vigilant around a number of areas. I mean, crypto caused problems, but maybe not financial instability, but still we had to deal with that, and we are. Issues like money market funds or non-bank sector, it's an important part of the economy, so we have to watch there. There were some issues more in the US than in Europe during COVID because there wasn't enough liquidity. So I think in times of great uncertainty where Europe and the world is now living through, we have to be very mindful, not of the obvious, but where there might be something behind that we need to be conscious of. But equally, if you look at the situation now with high prices on energy markets, we were concerned about the potential spillover of energy crisis into the financial system. We're guarding against that, so we're being very prudent about measures we're taking so that we don't, if you like, step into financial instability. What's been really striking is that COVID hit us, a pandemic of enormous proportions, and I think there were big concerns about what would be the outcome. But actually we managed very well. The banks managed the system to get capital to businesses, to citizens, to get member state support, national government support. So that was really positive, and you know, we have to commend the banks for that. We're now a horrible 9 months into a war, an illegal invasion by Russia of Ukraine. We still feel that we are, you know, stable, but we're also vigilant because of the uncertainties. And you know, even in the United States, I was there recently, and I was very, very conscious that there was the same mood, if you like. They're not as impacted severely as we are around energy because they have more energy resources and are indeed supplying us with LNG. But there was a nervousness there too that something might happen. Now, it's no harm that we're all a little bit on our toes, because we know when a financial crisis hit in the past, it had awful impacts on the financial system, but it really affected society and families and businesses. And many people live still with the scars of that. So I think we have to be very conscious that our role is an important one, to avoid anything that would cause financial instability and to try and be ahead of the game. Now, that's not always easy, particularly with digitalization and with new evolutions, that just for us to be mindful of all of these changes. So, I mean, in conclusion, what I would say is that we're watching for potential areas where there might be problems, and we're working very carefully to make sure that we don't see some of the spillovers from other areas into the financial system. So we're on our guard.
Understood. And if we address finally shadow banking, banks complain that shadow banks compete against themselves under a light touch regulation. Shadow banks say, yes, but I'm not taking deposits, so I don't have to have the same regulation as you do. What do you think between both?
Well, I mean, we always use this phrase level playing field. And I know that our banking system, certainly when we were regulating after the crisis, understood what had to be done. It wasn't easy, and I think it's always a painful process, but it was a very wise piece of legislation because we saw it being tested during COVID and it stood the test. So when you compare non-bank with bank, yes, of course, the banks will say that they don't have the same capital requirements or all of those pressures. But that's not to say we don't look at the non-bank sector. I mean, it's really important that we keep an eye as to the evolution there and make sure that some problems around liquidity don't arise if there is a rush for people to withdraw. So I think that while the banks sometimes complain of this, I think they also feel more secure that they are regulated. And obviously we're doing now the Basel III implementation, and there's some pressure to increase capital for some banks, but I think that's understood because we don't want to go back to the past where we had poor regulation or none at all. I think we will have to look at other areas of the financial system and architecture, not with an eye to go heavily to regulate, but to make sure that what we have at the moment is covering some of the risks, and if it's not, what risks do we need to cover? So I would say that we watch these and we discuss them internally in both the cabinet and the services to see, you know, out of COVID, when there was some pressure on money market funds in the US, did that impact Europe? The impact was much less. So we say at the moment that, you know, we know there are differences in regulation, but we don't see a major need to regulate now, but we're not saying that that will be the case maybe in the future. And I think with the financial system, and you probably know this too, there are evolutions and changes and there are practices, and sometimes you're caught between this piece of legislation and that piece. And that's where I suppose, that's what keeps me awake at night, trying to sort of see where these shadows are and whether they're long shadows or short ones, whether they're ones I need to really be conscious of or not. And I think particularly in times of great uncertainty, we all have to do that, to just watch out for the unexpected.
Understood. Thanks again for your visit.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Really nice. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.